The worn-out gloves hit the asphalt with a dull smack, and the entire block fell silent. The only sound the faint fizz of a forgotten soda can on the grass. 22 years old. A black belt with an unbeaten streak in 3 local tournaments. And he was grinning at me like I was already defeated. He had his phone out. He had an audience. He had everything but the one thing that actually mattered. What he didn't know was that I'd spent the last 20 years training men twice his size to survive situations he couldn't even imagine. I looked down at those gloves, then back into his eager eyes, and asked the only question I knew would cut through the noise. Are you certain this is what you want? My name is Sarah. I'm 43, and for most of my adult life, the people who knew my title called me Captain, and they said it with respect. But on Magnolia Lane, in the tidy, tree-lined suburbs of Oakhaven, I was simply the new resident at the end of the cul-de-sac who fixed her own faucet and drove a dusty pickup with a dent in the side. I moved there in July after my son, Leo, finished 8th grade. The real estate agent promised peace, and after 2 decades in uniform, I was ready to collect. I'd led soldiers through operations where a single misstep meant failure and briefed commanders who didn't flinch when I challenged their plans. But none of that mattered here. In this world, I was just Sarah, a single mom, a woman who kept her head down, smiled at the mailman, and never felt the urge to explain her past. I liked the anonymity. The house next door was owned by David Sterling, a wealthy developer who had constructed half the shopping plazas in the county and wanted everyone to know it. He drove a gleaming black SUV, always backing it in, letting the engine idle as if announcing his presence. His son, Kyle, was 22, home after dropping out of college and fully invested in his fight career, amateur MMA. He'd climbed the ranks quickly, though I never once saw him train with anyone who could truly challenge him. He had thousands of followers and a highlight reel that blasted music from his open garage every afternoon. I noticed him long before he noticed me. That's usually how it goes with guys like Kyle. They're so focused on being seen that they forget to look. He revved his motorcycle at sunrise right below my bedroom window for 3 days straight. He'd double park near the mailboxes like it was his personal space. One afternoon, I saw him shove a delivery driver for blocking the sidewalk for a few seconds too long. No one said a word. That's the thing about neighborhoods like Oakhaven. Everyone is polite until being polite costs them something. Then the silence gets heavy. I ran every morning before dawn because that was the time when the world still felt like mine. An old military habit. 5:30 was already sleeping in, as far as I was concerned. Cal caught me one morning jogging past his house in an old shirt and shorts. He said something to his friend, loud enough for me to hear. She doesn't even look like she could last a minute. I didn't stop. I didn't acknowledge him. There's a type of restraint you learn that isn't fear but precise control. Knowing exactly what you can do and choosing not to prove it to bystanders. I smiled. Not for him. For myself. Because if he knew even a fraction of what I'd survived, he would have swallowed those words before they left his mouth. To be honest, I understood him. I'd seen young men like Kyle before the military taught them what real strength meant. Kids raised on privilege and ego, mistaking aggression for confidence because no one ever showed them the difference. With the right discipline, Kyle might have made a decent soldier. He had the aggression, but none of the humility. And his father certainly wasn't going to teach him that. David Sterling treated the neighborhood like an extension of his portfolio. He was friendly to my face in that specific, dismissive way wealthy men are, already looking past me before I finished my sentence. I didn't take it personally. I'd met dozens of Davids in my life. Men who mistook their bank account for a command structure. What I didn't anticipate was that Kyle's focus would shift from me to my son. Leo was 15 that summer. He was introspective and quiet, the way kids get when they've moved around too much. He spent his evenings riding his bike, headphones in, simply existing. He didn't know anything about combat or command presence. He cared about video games and a new skateboard. He was, in every way that counted, still just a kid. I saw Kyle watching him one evening, that same smug expression on his face. Something in my chest went cold and precise. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself Kyle would eventually get bored. I was wrong. There's a specific dread that only parents know. It doesn't announce itself. It settles in slowly, like a change in the weather. You feel it before you can name it. By mid-July, I felt it every time Kyle's motorcycle idled near our house. It started small, as it always does. Kyle would cruise past the basketball hoop the kids played on, revving just enough to scatter them. He'd park his truck awkwardly across the court, scrolling his phone, pretending he didn't see the game he'd just wrecked. I could have excused it once, maybe twice. By the fourth time, I knew it was a message. Then it got personal. I came home from a long day of virtual meetings, the kind that leaves your jaw tight, and found Leo sitting on our front steps. He wasn't crying. He has a stillness when something is bothering him. A stillness I recognized from young soldiers after their first harsh lesson. "Everything okay?" I asked, setting my bag down slowly. He shrugged. "Kyle called me Mama's little soldier in front of everyone today. Like it was a joke." Everyone laughed. I felt something familiar ignite in my stomach. An old heat I hadn't felt in years. But I kept my voice level because that is the job. "What did you say?" I asked. "Nothing." What was I supposed to say? I sat next to him. Nothing was the right answer. "Listen, Leo. Don't fight people who are desperate to prove something. That hunger is bottomless. You can't satisfy it by reacting." He nodded, but I knew it didn't land. 15-year-olds don't run on wisdom. They run on embarrassment and the need to undo it. I hoped that would be the end. It wasn't. 10 days later, on a warm Saturday afternoon, I was in the kitchen when I heard raised voices outside. I stepped onto the porch. Leo was standing over his bike, which lay in the street with its chain off. Kyle stood a few feet away, phone raised, filming. "Say it again," Kyle was saying to his camera. "Say what you called me." Leo's face was red, hands clenched at his sides. I didn't run. I didn't shout. I walked with the same pace I'd use approaching a situation that needed control. "Pick up the bike," I said. Not loud. I didn't need loud. Kyle lowered his phone. Or what? I didn't answer. I just looked at him. I cataloged him, without judgment. Loose stance. Weight forward. The posture of someone used to being the most dangerous person in the room. But his eyes flickered. A flash of uncertainty he probably didn't even register. I've seen that flicker in men 3 times his size, right before they decide to back down. For a moment, I thought he might comply. Then David's SUV pulled into the driveway. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask if Leo was okay. He looked at me, in my gardening clothes with dirt on my knees, and seemed amused. "You military folks," he said, "always think your rank matters outside the base." I could have said a lot. I could have told him what it meant to hold the line when everyone around you falls apart. Instead, I picked up Leo's bike myself and walked it back to the garage. "Why didn't you say anything?" Leo asked later, voice cracking. "Because he wanted a reaction," I said. "And I don't hand out what people want just because they're loud enough to demand it." But that night, lying awake, I felt the old current stirring beneath the calm. I knew this wasn't over. Boys like Kyle don't stop because you walk away. They stop when the world shows them they were never as scary as they thought. The 4th of July in Oak Haven was a tradition. The HOA blocked off the street. Folding tables lined the pavement. Someone fired up a grill that filled the air with smoke. And by 3 in the afternoon, the street was packed. I almost didn't go. I was tired. But Leo wanted a normal day. After the summer he'd had, I couldn't deny him that. I wore jeans and an old t-shirt. Nothing special. I brought a potato salad and found a spot where I could watch Leo toss a football with the other kids. Kyle showed up around 4, already a few drinks in. He was loud, moving through the crowd like he owned it. He even pulled up his fight highlights on a neighbor's phone, narrating his victories. I watched from a distance, sipping lemonade, wanting nothing more than to get through the afternoon in peace. Around 5, the sun dipping low, Kyle's voice rose above the chatter. "Anyone here think they can take me?" he called out, arms spread. "Come on. I'll go easy." No one answered. Just uncomfortable laughter. That silence seemed to bother him more than a challenge would have. He scanned the crowd, and I felt the moment his eyes locked onto me. "What about you, Captain?" he said loudly, using the mocking nickname he'd given me. You're always so quiet, so tough. I bet you think you can beat me. I didn't answer. I took a sip of my lemonade. He crossed the pavement, unzipping a gym bag, and pulled out a pair of worn MMA gloves. He dropped them at my feet. The sound silenced the whole block. Phones went up. I felt every eye on the street shift to us. Come on, Kyle said, grinning at the cameras. Put your money where your mouth is. I haven't said a word, I said quietly. Exactly, he shot back. You just walk around like you're better than everyone. Show us. Or is the tough act just for civilians? I felt Leo's eyes on me from across the yard. I saw David step closer, phone already raised, expecting a show. I looked down at the gloves, then back at Kyle. Are you sure? I asked him.
Calm.
Even. The same tone I used to brief officers on high-stakes operations. Something flickered across his face, buried quickly under bravado. Scared, he taunted. I took off my watch, handed it to a neighbor, and walked to Leo. I gave him my phone. Stand behind the fence, I said. Stay there. The crowd went silent. Someone turned off the music. I stepped out of my sandals and onto the warm pavement. The July sun hung low, casting long shadows. Kyle rolled his neck, bounced on his toes, and slid his hands into the gloves. I didn't put any on. I didn't need them. Whenever you're ready, I said. The whole block held its breath. He came at me exactly as I expected. Cage fighters are trained to close distance fast, using aggression as a weapon. He lunged with a wild right hand. More flash than substance. I'd seen that move 1,000 times. I didn't throw a single punch. Not one. Not the entire fight. That wasn't mercy. It was strategy. A man used to being the alpha reads a counterpunch as confirmation he's in a fight. I wasn't there to confirm anything for him. I was there to end it. I slipped his first strike with a small pivot. His momentum carried him past me. The crowd gasped. He spun back with a low kick. I stepped inside it and caught his arm, using his own forward motion against him. He stumbled, and before he could recover, I had my hip against his, a body lock taking away his leverage. He tried to muscle out. Kyle was strong, but strength without structure just burns out. I felt the moment his breathing changed, his technique abandoned him. I swept his foot and put him on the ground. He scrambled up, his performance gone, replaced by raw frustration. He came at me faster, more desperate. His punch grazed past my ear, close enough to feel the air move. Something in me went cold and sharp. The same stillness I felt before a breach. I stepped behind him. A rear clinch. A trip. He hit the pavement hard, the wind leaving his lungs. I was on him before he could move. My weight settled across his back, a position he had no way to escape. He struggled, but it was instinct now, not strategy. He knew he was done. I secured his shoulder, isolated his arm, then shifted to his neck. A controlled hold. Not to hurt, only to communicate that this was finished. I still hadn't thrown a single punch. He tapped my forearm twice. Rapid, breathless. I released him instantly. I got to my feet, and after a long beat, I extended a hand. He took it. I pulled him up. The street was silent. 90 seconds had passed. Maybe less. It felt like an eternity. Kyle stood there, chest heaving, staring at me as if seeing a different person. I leaned in close, so only he could hear. Winning isn't the same as humiliating someone. I had 100 chances to hurt you. I didn't take a single one. That was a choice. He nodded once, something in his face cracking. I turned to Leo behind the fence. He was frozen, phone in his hand, eyes wide with a dawning realization. I walked to him and put my hand on his shoulder. Let's go home. Behind us, David's voice cut through. That's assault. Somebody call the police. I didn't turn around. I knew how this would end. The police arrived in minutes. David was shouting about unprovoked attacks. I told the officer plainly. Kyle challenged me publicly, threw gloves at my feet, and I accepted. I never struck him once. The officer looked skeptical. Then people came forward. Neighbors with videos. For different angles. The audio was clear. Kyle shouting. Put your money where your mouth is. The picture was undeniable. I hadn't attacked anyone. I was baited and ended it without raising a fist. No charges were filed. David didn't let it go. He hired a private investigator. He wanted leverage. What the investigation found was the truth about me. I had 22 years of service, command experience, deployments, current work at a command that put me in meetings with people he'd only read about. He began drafting letters to the Department of Defense, alleging misconduct. I learned about it through a neighbor. He wanted to see me sweat. I didn't sweat, not out of arrogance, but because I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. There was no version of an inquiry that ended badly for me. What I didn't know was that the inquiry would lead elsewhere. When they looked into David's background to verify the complaint, they found irregularities, falsified bid documents, shell companies, payments to officials that looked less like consulting fees and more like bribes. I did not orchestrate this. I made no calls. What happened to David happened because he built his empire on dishonesty and made the mistake of inviting scrutiny. The FBI got involved. Then the IRS. His contracts were frozen. Millions in projects suspended. Within 6 weeks, the man who tried to destroy my career was the subject of 3 federal inquiries. Kyle's world fell apart too. His gym suspended his membership. His sponsors distanced themselves. The highlight reel stopped. The street got quiet. Leo asked me one evening if I felt bad. I thought about it. I feel for anyone who has to watch their family fall apart. But we didn't do this. We just stopped absorbing what wasn't ours to carry. The Sterling house went up for sale by November. They moved out on a cold Tuesday. No one threw a party. Their absence just felt like an exhale. Kyle came to see me the week before they left. No phone. No audience. He looked like a kid who'd run out of road. I wanted to say something, he said. I was too busy trying to look tough to actually hear you. I looked at him. Strength isn't measured by who you can beat. It's measured by who you choose not to hurt. That's the lesson, Kyle. He nodded. Can I say sorry to Leo? I called Leo down. I watched from the kitchen as they stood on the porch. Kyle apologized. Leo listened. They shook hands. It wasn't dramatic. It was just 2 young men closing a door that had been open too long. The Sterlings moved away. I heard David eventually pled guilty to reduced charges and lost his license. I didn't follow the story. Oak Haven went back to being what it was supposed to be. Quiet. Peaceful. I still run every morning at 5:30. But something's different now. The neighbors who used to look past me stopped to wave. Sometimes they walk out early just to say good morning. And I always say it back. Leo is doing well. He's confident. He doesn't flinch. He inherited the stillness without me having to teach it. I think about that whole season with gratitude. It taught me all over again that patience isn't passivity. And the people who mistake your restraint for fear are always eventually the ones who learn the hardest lesson. Bullies mistake patience for weakness. They never realize the strongest people are usually the last ones looking for a fight. If this story meant something to you, drop a comment below and tell me what part hit hardest. I read every single one. And if you believe that quiet strength always wins, hit subscribe to Winds of Thought because we've got more stories like this waiting for you.